Can you still lower yourself into a chair and stand back up without pushing off with your hands? Or has that simple action become something you avoid without even realizing it? And here's the question that should terrify you. When was the last time you actually tested whether your body can still perform the basic movements that separate people who live independently into their 90s from those who end up in care homes or worse, dead within 5 years? Researchers at University College London followed over 8,000 people past retirement age and discovered something that changes everything we thought we knew about predicting lifespan. It's not your cholesterol numbers. It's not your blood pressure readings. It's not even your family history that tells doctors how long you've left. It's 7 simple movements, ordinary actions you do or should be doing every single day. And if you're struggling with even 2 of these, the statistics. Say your risk of mortality within the next 5 years increases by over 300%, not 30%, 300%. Right now, at this very moment, your body is either passing or failing a series of tests you didn't know you were taking. Every time you get out of bed, every time you climb a step, every time you reach for something on a shelf, your muscles, joints, balance systems, and cardiovascular function are revealing the truth about how much time you have left. And the brutal reality is that most people over 65 have already lost at least 3 of these critical abilities without anyone telling them what it means, without understanding that these aren't just inconveniences or normal aging. They're death sentences hiding in plain sight. The movement that predicts mortality better than almost any medical test is something you probably did 100 times a day without thinking about it. Or maybe you didn't do it at all. Maybe you've been unconsciously avoiding it, compensating, finding workarounds. And that avoidance is the clearest signal that your body is shutting down faster than you realize. Because here's what doctors know, but rarely explain clearly: these 7 movements aren't arbitrary. They're not random physical therapy exercises. Each one corresponds to a critical system in your body. Your leg strength predicts heart health. Your balance predicts brain function. Your ability to lift and carry predicts how long your organs can sustain you. And when these abilities disappear, it's not because you're getting older. It's because you're getting closer to the end. Some of these movements you can test right now, this moment, without any equipment, without leaving your chair. And within the next 60 seconds, you'll know whether you're in the danger zone, whether your body is silently counting down your final years. But before I reveal what these 7 movements are and why each one matters more than your last doctor's appointment, you need to understand why losing them is so deadly, why simply struggling with something as basic as standing on 1 foot for 10 seconds means your risk of falling, breaking a hip, and dying within a year increases by 470%. And why the medical establishment has known about these predictors for decades but never made them part of standard senior health assessments. Because there's no money in telling you to practice standing up from a chair. There's no pharmaceutical solution. There's just the uncomfortable truth that your body is either capable or it's failing. And today you're going to find out which category you're in. Movement number 1 is a sit-to-stand test. And if you cannot rise from a standard chair without using your arms to push yourself up, without rocking forward multiple times, without grabbing onto something for leverage, then your leg strength has declined to a point where researchers can predict with shocking accuracy that your independence is measured in months, not years. Because this movement isn't just about your thighs. It's testing whether your quadriceps, glutes, core muscles, and hip flexors are still communicating properly with your nervous system. And when that connection breaks down, when your brain sends a signal to stand and your muscles can't respond with coordinated power, it means the neuromuscular pathways are deteriorating, the same pathways that keep you from falling, that let you catch yourself when you stumble, that allow you to react quickly enough to avoid accidents that kill thousands of British seniors every single year. Let me tell you about Margaret from Manchester, 73 years old, who spent 2 years dismissing the fact that she needed to use the armrest of every chair she sat in. She told herself it was just stiffness, just her knees acting up, just something everyone her age deals with, until the day she missed her grip on the armrest and fell hard onto her kitchen floor, broke her hip, spent 4 months in hospital and rehabilitation, and never fully recovered her independence. She's now in assisted living, and when her doctor reviewed her case, he pointed to that single movement, the inability to stand unassisted, as a warning sign everyone, including Margaret herself, had ignored. Try this right now. Sit in a firm chair with your feet flat on the ground. Cross your arms over your chest so you can't cheat, and stand up in one smooth motion. If you can't do it, if you need to lean forward and rock, if you need to uncross your arms and push, you just failed the most basic predictor of the functional decline. But here's movement number 2, and this one reveals something even more critical about your brain's ability to keep you alive. Stand up right now. Find something sturdy. Nearby, just in case. Lift one foot off the ground and see if you can hold that position for 10 full seconds without grabbing for support, without putting your foot down, without wobbling so badly that you nearly fall. Because balance isn't just about your inner ear or your leg strength. It's about your brain's processing speed, about whether your cerebellum can still make thousands of micro adjustments per second to keep you upright. And when you lose that ability, when you can't stand on one leg for even 10 seconds, studies from King's College London show your risk of dying from any cause in the next decade doubles. Not because standing on one leg is essential to survival, but because it reveals that your brain is aging faster than your chronological age, that the neural connections responsible for coordination, spatial awareness, and rapid response are breaking down. I knew a man named Colin from Birmingham, 76, who laughed off his poor balance, made jokes about getting old and clumsy, until he lost his balance stepping off a curb, fell into the street, and was struck by a cyclist. The accident didn't kill him, but the complications from his injuries did. 8 months later, he was gone. And his family learned afterward that his inability to balance on one leg during a routine physical had been documented by his GP 2 years earlier, a red flag that should have triggered intervention, exercises, physical therapy, something. But instead it was noted in his chart and forgotten. And now Colin is a statistic, another preventable death hiding behind the words natural causes. Movement number 3 is climbing 12 stairs without stopping to rest, without gripping a handrail with white knuckles, without arriving at the top completely breathless and needing to sit down. And if this describes you, if a single flight of stairs feels like climbing a mountain, then your cardiovascular system is failing you in ways that predict heart attack, stroke, and sudden death far more accurately than your last ECG or blood pressure reading. Because stair climbing forces your heart to pump oxygenated blood against gravity, forces your lungs to work harder, forces every major muscle group in your legs to fire in sequence. And when your body can't handle that demand, when 12 steps leave you gasping and weak, it means your heart muscle has lost its reserve capacity, the buffer that keeps you alive during physical stress, during illness, during the everyday demands of living independently. There was a woman named Diane from Edinburgh, 68 years old, who started taking the lift at her flat instead of stairs, told herself it was just easier, just more convenient, never admitted that the real reason was the burning in her chest and the dizziness she felt halfway up, and one afternoon while walking to the post office on level ground, her heart simply stopped, sudden cardiac arrest. And when the paramedics reviewed her history, when they talked to her daughter, they learned she'd been avoiding stairs for over a year, a massive red flag that her heart was already in crisis, that her exercise tolerance had collapsed, but because she never mentioned it to her GP, because she never tested herself and faced the truth, there was no intervention, no cardiac workup, nothing, and now she's gone. Test yourself today. Find a staircase. 12 steps is standard, and walk up at a normal pace. Don't sprint, don't crawl. Just walk the way you would if you were trying to catch a bus. And if you need to stop, if your heart is pounding out your chest, if you feel lightheaded or your legs turn to jelly, you've just discovered that your aerobic capacity has declined into the danger zone. But movement number 4 is perhaps the most revealing of all because it combines strength, flexibility, balance, and coordination into one devastating assessment. Can you get down onto the floor and stand back up again without using your hands, without crawling to furniture, without needing someone to pull you up? Because this movement called the sitting rising test was developed by Brazilian researchers who found that people who couldn't perform had a mortality rate 6 times higher than those who could do it easily 6 times. And the reason is simple. Getting up from the floor requires your entire body to work as an integrated system. Your ankles, knees, hips, spine, shoulders, core, everything has to fire in perfect sequence with enough power and control to lift your body weight against gravity. And when you've lost that ability, when getting down means you might not get back up, it signals that multiple systems are failing simultaneously. I knew a gentleman named Robert from Bristol, 71, who fell in his garden one autumn morning. Nothing dramatic, just slipped on wet leaves. But he couldn't get himself back up. He lay there for 20 minutes trying different approaches, rolling, pushing, pulling, until finally his neighbor heard him calling and came to help. And that incident, that moment of complete helplessness, broke something inside Robert. He became afraid to go outside, afraid to be alone. His world shrank to the rooms in his house where he knew he could grab furniture if he fell. And within 18 months, the combination of isolation, inactivity, and depression had aged him a decade. His muscles wasted further, his balance deteriorated more, and when he finally did fall again, this time in his bathroom at night, he fractured his skull and died 3 days later in hospital, all because he'd lost one fundamental ability and never fought to get it back. Movement number 5 is carrying a bag of shopping from your car to your kitchen, not struggling with it, not stopping halfway to rest your arms, not needing to drag it along the ground or ask for help, just picking up 5 kilograms of groceries and walking 10 meters with confidence and control. And if this has become impossible, if you started buying less at the shops because you can't carry it anymore, if you started asking the delivery driver to bring bags inside, then your grip, strength, and overall functional capacity have declined to a point where studies show your mortality risk jumps by over 200%. Because carrying a moderate load tests everything simultaneously. Your hands must grip firmly enough. Your forearms and biceps must support the weight. Your shoulders must stabilize. Your core must keep you upright. Your legs must walk steadily without your balance being thrown off. And your heart and lungs must supply enough oxygen to sustain all of this at once, which is why doctors now recognize grip strength as one of the single best predictors of how long you'll live. Stronger grip equals longer life. It's that simple and that proven. There was a woman named Patricia from Brighton, 74, who slowly stopped going to the supermarket herself. She said it was because she preferred online delivery, more convenient, better prices. But the truth her daughter discovered later was that Patricia couldn't carry a single shopping bag anymore. Her hands were too weak, her arms too tired, and she was ashamed to admit it, ashamed to seem helpless. So she hid behind excuses and let her muscles waste further from disuse. And when she finally fell ill with pneumonia and was hospitalized, the doctors noted her severe muscle wasting, her inability to grip the bed rails, her overall frailty, and they told her family that her chances of recovery were poor because her body simply didn't have the strength reserves to fight, and they were right. Patricia never left that hospital. Movement number 6 might surprise you because it seems so trivial compared to the others. Can you turn your head fully to the left and fully to the right, looking directly over each shoulder without pain, without stiffness, without your whole upper body having to rotate because your neck is frozen? And you might think this doesn't matter. What does neck rotation have to do with staying alive? But the answer is everything, because limited neck mobility is directly linked to falls, to car accidents, to social isolation, and to rapid cognitive decline. When you cannot turn your head, you cannot check your blind spot before crossing the road. You cannot see who's approaching from the side. You cannot engage in conversations without awkwardly turning your entire body. And research from Oxford University found that seniors with severely restricted neck movement were 3 times more likely to die within 5 years, not from neck problems, but from the cascade of consequences that follow. I remember a man named Thomas from Leeds, 77, whose neck had become so stiff from arthritis that he couldn't look over his shoulder. He adapted by avoiding situations where he'd need to. He stopped driving, stopped attending social gatherings where he'd have to turn to talk to people, essentially stopped participating in life. And that isolation, that withdrawal, led to depression. The depression led to inactivity. The inactivity led to further physical decline, and within 3 years, Thomas was in a care home. His mind still sharp, but his body completely broken down. And he'd tell anyone who'd listen that it all started when he stopped being able to turn his head. Such a small thing, such a massive consequence. Movement number 7 is a master predictor that encompasses all the others. Can you raise both arms straight overhead until your biceps are next to your ears? Hold them there for 5 seconds without pain, without compensating by arching your back, without one arm being significantly lower than the other. Because the simple overhead reach tests your shoulder joints, your rotator cuff muscles, your thoracic spine flexibility, your posture, and even your breathing capacity. And when you lose this movement, when reaching up becomes limited or painful or impossible, it's not just about inconvenience. It's a signal that your upper body has begun the same decline that's already affecting your legs and core. And research shows that seniors who cannot perform this movement have significantly higher rates of disability, dependence, and mortality within the following years. Because think about what you can no longer do when your arms won't go overhead. You cannot reach the top shelves in. Your kitchen cannot hang washing on the line, cannot brush your hair properly, cannot get dressed without struggle, cannot wave to someone across the street, cannot embrace your grandchildren properly. Every aspect of independent living becomes harder, and harder leads to avoidance. Avoidance leads to further weakness, and weakness leads to the care home or the grave. There was a woman named Elizabeth from Cardiff, 79, who noticed her shoulders getting stiffer over several years. She dismissed it as arthritis, something to live with, but slowly her world became smaller. She couldn't put dishes away in high cabinets, so she rearranged her entire kitchen to keep everything low. She couldn't hang pictures or change light bulbs, so she paid people to do it. She couldn't wash her own hair properly, so she started going to the salon weekly, and each accommodation, each workaround, masked the underlying truth that her body was failing. And when she finally saw a physiotherapist who tested her range of motion and found she could barely lift her arms to shoulder height, the therapist explained that this level of restriction was associated with severe quality of life decline and increased mortality risk. But by then, Elizabeth's muscles had atrophied so much that recovery was nearly impossible. She'd waited too long, accepted too much, and now she lives with her daughter, dependent for nearly every task that requires reaching, and she'll tell you with tears in her eyes that she wishes someone had warned her sooner, had told her that losing these movements wasn't just aging, it was dying in slow motion. Now here's what makes this movement the master test. If you can still raise your arms overhead easily, it usually means your posture is still good, your spine hasn't collapsed forward, your core is still strong enough to support your upper body, and your overall muscle mass hasn't deteriorated catastrophically. It's a positive indicator that suggests even if you're struggling with some of the other 6 movements, your body still has enough structural integrity to improve, to rebuild, to fight back against decline. But if you cannot raise your arms, if this movement is already gone, then you're looking at a compressed timeline, not decades of healthy life ahead, but years, maybe months, and the urgency to act becomes absolute, because every day you accept these limitations, every night you go to bed without doing something to reverse them, you're choosing decline, you're choosing dependence, you're choosing a shorter life. And I need you to understand that this choice, even if it's a choice made through inaction and ignorance, is still a choice, and you can make a different one starting right now, today, this moment. So here's the timeline for what happens if you start working on these 7 movements today versus what happens if you do nothing. And I need you to face this brutally honest assessment because your life literally depends on understanding the difference. If you begin practicing these movements this week, gently testing yourself, working within your limits, but pushing slightly beyond your comfort zone, within the first 2 weeks you'll notice almost nothing, maybe slightly less stiffness, maybe a bit more confidence. But the real changes are happening invisibly. Your neuromuscular connections are starting to rewire. Your muscles are beginning to remember movement patterns they've forgotten. By week 4 to 6, this is when most people notice the first real improvements. Standing from a chair feels less effortful. Balance holds a second or 2 longer. Stairs don't leave you quite so breathless. And these small victories are signals that your body is responding, that decline can be reversed, that you haven't waited too late. By week 8 to 12, the changes become undeniable. Movements that were impossible are now difficult. Movements that were difficult are now manageable, and movements that were manageable become easy again. Your grip strengthens, your posture improves, your confidence returns. And with confidence comes more movement, more activity, more life. But here's the timeline if you do nothing. If you watch this video, nod along, tell yourself you'll start tomorrow, and then let tomorrow turn into next week, and next week turn into never. Within 3 months, at least 2 of these 7 movements will deteriorate further. Within 6 months, your risk of a serious fall increases by 40%. Within a year, your likelihood of hospitalization from preventable causes doubles. And within 5 years, the statistics say you'll either be completely dependent on others or you'll be dead. Not maybe, not possibly. The research is clear and consistent. Losing these functional abilities is a terminal diagnosis delivered in slow motion. The protocol is simple, but it requires daily commitment. Pick the movements you struggle with most and practice them every single day, not for hours, not until exhaustion, just 5 to 10 minutes of focused effort. If standing from a chair is hard, do it 5 times each morning and evening. If balance is poor, practice standing on one leg while holding a countertop, gradually reducing your grip. If stairs wind you, climb them slowly once a day, adding one extra step each week. If getting off the floor is impossible, start by lowering yourself with support and building the strength to reverse the movement. If carrying loads is difficult, start with lighter weights and progress gradually. If neck rotation is limited, do gentle stretches multiple times daily. If overhead reach is restricted, work on shoulder mobility with simple exercises any physiotherapist can teach you. The cost of doing this is 10 minutes a day and some temporary discomfort. The cost of not doing it is everything. Your independence, your dignity, your remaining years. Because what you need to understand, what I need you to truly absorb, is that these 7 movements aren't just physical tests. They're measurements of your will to live, your commitment to yourself, your refusal to accept that decline is inevitable. Every senior who's regained these abilities, who's fought back against the statistics, who's still living independently in their 80s and 90s, they all made the same choice. They decided that today mattered more than tomorrow's excuses. That action mattered more than comfort. That life mattered more than the fear of effort. And now you have to make that same choice. Right now, not later. Not when you feel ready. Because you'll never feel ready. You'll never wake up one morning suddenly motivated to change. Change happens when you decide it must. When the alternative becomes more frightening than the work required. So test yourself today. Face the truth about which movements you've lost. And then start taking them back, one repetition at a time, one day at a time, because your life isn't over until you stop fighting for it. And these 7 movements are how you fight.